Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. Christmas morning came last week with the NFL Draft, and today we're going to break down what each team did. I'm Bobby Sylvester, and you can find me on Twitter at BobbyFantasyPro, and co-host Mike Tagliere can be found on Twitter at Mike Tagliere NFL. Mike, Merry Draft Christmas.
It was a Christmas for me on Christmas morning. We did our mock draft show last week, it was a week and a half ago, and I actually mocked Mitch Trubisky to the Bears. Now, I didn't have them trading up to number 2 to get him, but at the same time, I felt like it still was a need for the team. I know we're going to talk about it. I'm excited. There's a lot of things that happened, man, but yes, it definitely was Christmas. There was a lot that happened, and we're going to break that all down today.
So our listeners know you're a Bears fan, and when they saw this happen, they were probably laughing at you, like, why are they trading up to number 2? Now, I understand it, but why don't you tell them why it actually makes sense?
Okay, well, this is including our Fantasy Pros group chat. I got made fun of in that. I had friends texting me saying, what are the Bears doing? And it was really unfair. They were getting berated on Twitter, everything. And I think it really all stems, Bobby. I've had a chance to calm down and collect my thoughts and put them together for everybody rather than rant, because I actually created a solo podcast on Saturday that we didn't release because I just ranted too much about the Bears. That's basically what it came down to. But here's the thing. Here's what it all comes down to. The reason people are unhappy about this trade is because they don't like Mitch Trubisky. I'm with them. It's not necessarily the trade, because people are like, oh, this was a dumb trade. They gave up 2 third-rounders and a 4th-round pick. If this was Jared Goff last year, if this was Carson Wentz last year, people were saying, you have to give it up to get a franchise quarterback. And those teams gave up a lot more than the Bears did to get Trubisky. Now, people are also saying they only had to trade up ones. I mean, they could have got him where they were at. That's really not true. There was a legitimate offer that was coming into San Francisco.
Probably several.
Yeah, the Bears wouldn't have just given that for him. Now, your talent evaluation of him is totally separate. If you don't like Trubisky, that's on you. But the Bears and Ryan Pace have put all their faith into this kid, and I really respect them for being bold and saying we need to do something to shake up this franchise. Bobby, we've talked about it all.
The Rams did that last year with Jared Goff, and
right.
I'm sure it was just to get ratings and people showing up to their stadium, because it's not going to happen. They're so bad again. It's not going to happen in Los Angeles. Los Angeles just does not support bad teams. But
here's the thing.
It didn't work out for them. We'll see if it works out for the Bears.
Everybody was mad. They wanted Jay Cutler gone. We got rid of Jay Cutler. Everybody wanted Mike Glennon. And then, why'd the Bears spend so much? Nobody was bidding against them. Now they're mad at Mike Glennon. Now they're booing Mitch Trubisky at the Bulls game. Like, none of it makes sense. No, the Bears needed change. I applaud Ryan Pace because he did not settle for mediocrity. And by settling for mediocrity, that would have been taking somebody like Deshaun Watson. I've talked about it. I just feel like he's going to be a solid NFL quarterback, but nothing special.
Yeah.
I think Trubisky, he was my favorite quarterback in the class.
He has the most upside. He definitely has. I don't know. Mahomes has quite a bit of upside too. I mean, Chicago sports fans are just spoiled with winning. I mean, they've got the Cubs winning 1 World Series in the last 108 years. So, I mean, what do you expect?
Oh, stop it. It's one in the last 1 year, Bobby. Anyways, no, but the rest of the Bears draft, I mean, I know we'd want to talk about that. And I was not overwhelmed by it. I really think that there was some other needs that the Bears needed to address. I know they got Eddie Jackson, but they traded up in the 4th round, and I just really don't know if it was necessary, because Eddie Jackson, while a solid player, has plenty of injury concerns.
He's a really nice pick in the 4th round, though. I mean, if they were going to wait for him to drop, they were not going to get a talent like Eddie Jackson. So I thought the trade-up was good there. I love Adam Shaheen at tight end. I think they went a little early on him, pick 45 overall, but this is a really talented player. I know he played at Ashland, so no one knows who he is, but 6'5", 277, he's a weapon.
Yeah, he definitely is. This is someone that Ian Rappaport said that would go earlier than most people expected, because a lot of people coming into the draft thought he was going to be day 3, and Ian Rappaport was saying, no, Shaheen is going to go earlier than you think.
Yeah.
And, for the Bears to go and get him, I mean, they signed Deion Sims in the offseason. They have Zach Miller. I just don't know if it was one of the biggest needs. I would have rather them attack the cornerback position, to be honest with you.
Now, I think the best team in the draft, well, the second best team in the draft, we'll get to the best team later, was the Green Bay Packers. Are you in agreement with me? Do you think they just knocked out of the park?
I think that they definitely got some value. I like that they took Kevin King there. I think Kevin King is a little big. I don't know how he'll hold up. Like, most cornerbacks are around that 5'10" to 6 foot range because they're agile. But
he's 6'3".
He is. He's a massive guy. And granted, in today's NFL, maybe that's what you need. They did snag a safety. They got some really good value late in the draft with Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones. It kind of the running back position. They tried to solidify that later in the draft. So yeah, they definitely had a good draft. But you know what? It's funny though, Bobby. When you're a Bears fan, as long as I am, I've been. You get to learn that everybody seems to praise the Packers draft, and then it comes down to it, and the players just don't necessarily perform as they're supposed to, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Well, I'm not too worried about the defensive side of the ball. I don't think Kevin King's as great as everyone is making him out to be. I mean, I'm seeing CBS Sports give him an A+ rating. Some people had him in the first round, I understand, but I just don't think this is a first-round talent based on all the other secondary players who are there. Josh Jones is all right. Montavious Adams, a great defensive tackle pick, as they tend to make in Green Bay. But the reason I like their draft so much is because Jamal Williams is number 6 on my running back draft board, maybe number 5. Everyone loves Jamal Williams, right? I mean, This could be a fantasy superstar one day. But I love Aaron Jones. His spark rating was number 1 of all running backs. I think that he could be a fantasy superstar. He could be the guy he could be like Jordan Howard, being drafted in the first round next year. Aaron Jones is a spectacular athlete. I know he's 5'9", 208, but you watch this boy run at Texas El Paso, 7.7 yards per carry. I might be drafting him in fantasy leagues. We'll see where his ADP is, but I think he's going to end up winning this job. He's a very talented running back.
Well, I could tell you that you're not alone, but the Packers have come out and said that Ty Montgomery is still the starter. Now, here's the thing. Jamal Williams was drafted the 50 picks before Aaron Jones, so the Packers obviously believe that Jamal Williams is their starter. I mean, he would be starting over Aaron Jones. It's not to say that it can't happen because, Kadeem Carey was taken well before Jordan Howard was, even though they were in different drafts. But for me, I like Jamal Williams. I said it before the draft. I said, depending on landing spot, this guy could be a game changer.
They're both awesome.
I think he could be the Jordan Howard of this year. I think that Jamal Williams is an incredibly hard worker. I think he's a little bit misunderstood. I've read some background on him, and his story is actually quite entertaining. So it's definitely, you're not alone. I've heard other people say that Aaron Jones is better than Jamal Williams. I'm not necessarily on that train, but I could see it definitely happen. I think they got tremendous value in the 4th and 5th rounds.
I mean, 2 of the top 6 running backs in the 4th and 5th round. That's just incredible. That does not happen very often. And they were wise to wait. Everyone was wondering why they didn't go pick Joe Mixon or, whoever was sitting on the board. Dalvin Cook was sitting on the board. They waited and they got Jamal Williams with their 4th round pick. So I think that worked out really nice for them. And I like a lot of the rest of their draft. Now, what about the other teams in this NFC North? Do you like what Detroit did?
Detroit, it was very mediocre. I didn't feel like they did anything special. I didn't feel like they did anything impact-wise where it's going to make them a team that you're going to run from. Kenny Golladay in the 3rd round at the end of the 3rd round.
I love him, but that's early.
Yeah, it really struck me as early. I was like, whoa. I didn't think he'd come off the board in day 2, but he definitely did. And the Lions obviously see something in him. For me, it's a little concerning for Marvin Jones' dynasty value because they're looking for a big downfield receiver. The really interesting one to me was the Minnesota Vikings taking Dalvin Cook. They traded up to get Dalvin Cook when Joe Mixon was still on the board. Now, granted, we don't know if they were one of the teams that was willing to pick Mixon, but Joe Mixon's a better talent than Dalvin Cook. Trading up to the number 9 pick in the 2nd round to get Dalvin Cook, when you went out in free agency and you signed Latavius Murray, you have Jerick McKinnon, who people have been waiting for. Now, granted, I think some people have said they still want Jerick McKinnon on their team because they feel like he's the one who could do something with nothing. I'm not really aboard that train. I was up until they drafted Dalvin Cook, and I think
he had his chance. It's over. I love McKinnon as much as anyone, but he's not getting another chance.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that he's now a 5 to 8 touch running back per game. Unless Dalvin Cook gets hurt, I don't want anything to do with McKinnon.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's one other player I want to talk about with the Lions. Brad Kaya was drafted in the 6th round. I think this quarterback has as much upside as anybody. It was just 18 months ago. Everyone was saying he was going to be the number 1 overall pick. He had a mediocre year. If you look at what he did compared to Trubisky against similar opponents, Kaya was better. I'm not saying he's the better quarterback, but I think he has as much upside. He's got all kinds of raw ability. He's 6'4", 214. I think this is a steal in the 6th round. I know he kind of has that Jay Cutler personality going on for him, so that turned off a lot of teams, but I think he can be a real good one.
Yeah, well, Kaya, I think people expected him to go a little bit earlier. I don't even know if the Lions expected to take a quarterback, to be honest with you. But they did. I mean, at the end of the 6th round, I guess you really can't fault him for that. When I watched Kaya on tape, it was a lot of players that were making things after the catch, like David Njoku. But for me, I wasn't really overly impressed with Kaya. I don't think that there's anything that stood out to me that was just like, oh my God, I cannot not have this guy. So I think that's why he ultimately fell down draft boards. I think that teams are starting to realize that these boring quarterbacks, like, the Christian Hackenberg that the Jets took in the 2nd round last year, like, why do you draft guys like that in the 2nd round? So Kaya fell down the board. I think that you could argue that Chad Kelly was even a bigger value going when he did. He was Mr. Irrelevant. Wasn't he the last pick in the draft?
Yeah, he was. Frankly, I'm surprised he was drafted based on his attitude problems, but he's got a lot of talent.
Yeah, definitely.
With this Vikings draft, there's a couple players who stand out to me. Elfian, the center out of Ohio State, very good center. They got him in the 3rd round, so that's a nice value. Jaleel Johnson is a nice defensive tackle, but they had so many picks, the Vikings did, that I would think they would have taken some risks. Like taking some really high upside players. They didn't. I don't really like that kind of draft.
Yeah, they should. They're a team that should have definitely went for it like right now, because they're a team that their defense is aging. They have Terrence Newman, who's like 50 years old. And he played out of his mind last year. He played really well. Their cornerbacks are just aging, and eventually their defense is not going to be. And I honestly think it could be as early as this year where their defense starts to fall down a little bit from the cornerback position, which could really, really hurt them in the NFC North. The one other interesting pick before we move to the next division I wanted to talk about is Michael Roberts, the tight end that was drafted in the 4th round to the Lions. There were some people that have been concerned that Eric Ebron is getting passed over, and there was talks.
That's crazy to me.
I think it is too. I think he's way too young to just give up on him. But
he was the 10th overall pick.
Yeah, no, they spent a lot of equity, but it's a different regime there now in Detroit, so it's easy to see it. Michael Roberts, 6'4", 270. He's a playmaker. He's saying that in the red zone, he could be a touchdown monster, so that's something that Eric Ebron has obviously lacked to this point in his career, so he's a name I'm keeping track of, but it definitely lowered Eric Ebron's stock just a little bit for me in Dynasty, because most people tend to overrate tight ends in their first year in the league. I think there's only 2 tight ends, maybe 3 that you should worry about this year.
Yeah. People were talking about David Njoku going to the Lions in the 1st round. I just thought that was absolutely nuts. Ebron was pretty consistent throughout the year, and he's still so young. I think he could be a nice player. I'll definitely be looking to add him in fantasy this year, unless he's getting picked a lot earlier than he deserves.
Definitely.
Now let's move on over to the NFC West. A ton of people were talking about this Cardinals draft. They got Hassan Reddick, who was moving up draft boards. They think he can be a superstar. People are comparing Budda Baker to Bob Sanders, but why did he go in the 2nd round? I think he even went a little bit earlier than most people were thinking. Do you like their draft as much as most people?
No, I actually like Budda Baker. When he went, I was like, yes, the Cardinals are doing exactly what I thought they would do. And it was like a team that, a lot of people mocked them having a wide receiver like a Corey Davis or going with Pat Mahomes at number 13. And even though neither of them were on the board at that point, I really felt like the Cardinals were going to go for it this year. We've talked about it.
Gotta win now. Reddick's going to help.
It's a very, very small window in the NFL. So Budda Baker, he's undersized, yes, but I think that there's players on this team around him that can help make him look and be actually better. Reddick is obviously a great signing at number 13. He can come in and contribute right away. Chad Williams is interesting. I think that's one that could take a little bit of time for it to kind of come to life, because I think he's probably going to enter maybe with Jaron Brown, in a competition with him, for the number 4 wide receiver spot. I don't think he's someone that contributes right away.
He put up some really big numbers at Grambling. I'm interested to see how it translates to the NFL.
It is going to be interesting, but and they do need some bigger wide receivers. You have John Brown and J.J. Nelson on the outside with Larry Fitzgerald in the slot, so they can use a bigger wide receiver. So I'm guessing that they're hoping he pans out and can play right away. But Dorian Johnson, the offensive guard they took in the 4th round.
Top value pick in the draft as far as I'm concerned. He could have gone in the 1st round. He's got a lot of talent.
I actually do like him, and I was shocked that the Cardinals didn't try and take Forrest Lamp, because Forrest Lamp, if I'm not mistaken, he was still on the board when they picked in the 2nd round.
Yeah, you're right. Well, did they trade up to get Budda Baker? Or did they have that pick?
They did. That's the pick from the Bears. So yes, they did trade up, because I think the Bears got it was a 3rd or a 4th round pick in 2018 to move back a little bit.
Now, what about what the Los Angeles Rams did? They didn't have a 1st round pick because they traded him for Bambi last season, and then they traded back in the 2nd to get Gerald Everett, the 5th best tight end in the draft, with the 44th overall pick. How do you feel about? You know how I feel about this. How do you feel?
The Gerald Everett move doesn't make any sense to me. It really doesn't at all. When they drafted him, it was kind of like, okay, there were some really, really, really good wide receivers on the board at that point. Cooper Kupp. Honestly,
they need a playmaker, and then they go out and get Cooper Kupp, who, look, he's decent, and he could be a nice 4th wide receiver on a team like the Packers who pass a ton, but he's not going to make an impact for the Rams.
Well, the issue is he's going to have to. He's going to start right away.
Exactly.
He's going to start right away. I think this impacts Robert Woods the most, is because some people were projecting him to see 120 plus targets, but I think Cooper Kupp, the reason I'm okay with the pick of him, I'm not necessarily high on Cooper Kupp's talent, but for me, I'm okay because he does well what Jared Goff needs. They need a player to build Jared Goff's confidence, and Cooper Kupp is a kind of a guy who's going to go over the middle. He's a big slot wide receiver. He's going to get things done. He's very boring, but at the same time, it might be just what Jared Goff needs to start getting his confidence, dumping it off over the middle of the field, and then extending the plays to the outside because, as you know, they took Josh Reynolds there in the 4th round, and I think Josh Reynolds is someone who could be a good vertical threat outside of Cooper Kupp. You know what I mean? So they're starting to try and surround him. I mean, my problem is that they have very boring players around him, but again, Cooper Kupp might be just what he needs.
They might win 4 games this year. That would be a very good season for the Rams.
Their defense should allow them to win 4 games.
Yeah, I think you're right. Now, the Seattle Seahawks took Malik McDonald with the 35th pick. Oh, God,
the worst draft. I'm sorry.
Are you serious? You really think so?
I hated. No. Here's the thing. I love Malik McDowell. I love the player. My issue with the Seahawks, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but I don't know what the hell they're doing because they totally abandoned the offensive line.
Good point. Yeah, they really needed some offensive line help. Pocket. They have a center. That's their only offensive lineman they have.
That's my issue.
Maybe they're thinking he can move to guard because Pocket is awesome.
Yeah,
that was a really nice pick.
That's the only thing that I could see happening is that they move him to a guard position. But still, Russell Wilson is going to die. Like, I'm pretty convinced that Russell Wilson...
I was going to draft Russell Wilson until this draft, and then I'm like, well, not anymore.
I'm not kidding. I lowered him down my boards. I would rather have Dak Prescott than Russell Wilson this year. And
that's pushing it.
No, I looked at it, and I'm just like, last year, I don't know if they didn't learn. You have to protect your quarterback. I don't care that he's mobile. You do not have a right and a left tackle. Like, what are they doing? I don't...
Maybe they're expecting teams to make some salary cuts, and then they'll pick them up. I don't know. I have no idea because it was not working last year.
No, it definitely wasn't. We saw Russell Wilson almost go backwards in his career because of it. So for me, I didn't like their draft. Now, granted, I said Malik McDowell, he was the pick I really liked. Pochik can be fine, but again, it was the one position that they really didn't need. So I just feel
How do you feel about Darboh, the wide receiver out of Michigan, going in the 3rd?
That's a weird one for me because I have no issue with Darboh, the player, but I also felt like this is a team that has refused to give up on Jermaine Kearse. They hadn't let Paul Richardson see the field, and at the end of the year they were kind of forced to with the Tyler Lockett injury. So it's like, oh, Paul Richardson's a thing. Amara Darboh, he's more of like that possession style wide receiver. I don't think he has good enough speed on the outside. He's got a really interesting story, and I'm not opposed to Darboh, but my issue is that they're not going to use him right away. I know that because Pete Carroll doesn't put on wide receivers in the field in their first 3 years in the league. So,
yeah.
Even Tyler Lockett wasn't seeing the field very much when he was healthy. So, Darboh, man, this Seattle team has a window, and they're blowing it.
I don't know what they were doing. I like the players they picked, but it's not a good fit. Malik McDowell could be a top 10 type of talent.
Agreed.
And they got him at 35. He could be a superstar if he gets together.
Agreed. And that's the thing is if they took him and it's like, okay, I wanted you to take a lineman there. Again, there were some really good offensive linemen. Cam Robinson was there, and then they traded with the Jaguars, and they went up and took Cam Robinson. So they have the opportunity to solidify their left tackle position, but they traded back 1 pick with the Jaguars and took Malik McDowell. So I was like, okay. And I thought maybe they would start addressing the offensive line from there on forward because I think they had 11 picks in this draft. And as it turns out, they took 1 center and 1 tackle in the 6th round.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. Now, the 49ers, everyone was loving what they did in the 1st round, trading back. It was a nice trade for them. They still got their guy. I don't like Solomon Thomas, but they got their guy. And then Reuben Foster at 31, people thought, some people are saying he has a Ray Lewis type of game. At 31, that's a nice value, but he's got the diluted sample. Hopefully he is able to stay on the field. But after this 1st round, I thought they had by far the worst draft of any team. You look at it, there's not a single name that stands out. They reached for 4 players. Are you with me?
Yeah, CJ Beathard, taking him in the 3rd round, I didn't get it at all. I wrote it, and I was doing the live blog as this was going on, and I wrote it in there. I said they will be drafting their franchise quarterback in 2018 or going after Kirk Cousins because CJ Beathard is not it. I love Reuben Foster. I know some people are out there saying that he's undersized and that, don't get too excited about him. He's a player that I love to have on my defense. He's aggressive. He's mean. He's a type of guy that you're coming at in the open field you do not want to see. He has some Luke Kuechly traits to his game. He is a little bit undersized. You do have some health concerns. Solomon Thomas, I'm kind of with you. He's a solid player, but I have no problem with the Bears not taking Solomon Thomas with that pick. And yeah, I agree with you. I'm with you. After the first day, I felt like that the 49ers draft went a little bit downhill. Joe Williams, the running back out of Utah, in the 4th round, I felt like he was a little overdrafted. There's word coming out that they don't like Vance McDonald now with the new San Francisco regime. And I don't know. They don't like Vance McDonald or Carlos Hyde, their 2 best players from 2016. I don't know. I thought it was weird that they didn't take any wide receivers either.
Now, Tags, let's move on over to the NFC South. We'll start with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because I've got to talk about this Cameron Brate situation. He was a very good tight end last year, and then they go and draft O.J. Howard in the first round. I can't make sense of this.
I can't envision in any scenario that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were sitting there at number 19 thinking that O.J. Howard would fall all the way back to them.
That's a good point.
I think that they had discussed taking a running back if one had fallen there, but Dalvin Cook, again, he's just someone that hasn't impressed. And what this draft really told me about the Bucs is that they're going to keep Doug Martin around. So if you're out there doing MFL 10s right now, if you're in a dynasty league, go and trade for Doug Martin because
agree.
All signs have shown that they're going to hang on to him. The Bucs draft overall, and I'm sure you're with me, Bobby, I think you get to a point where it's like weapon overload. And, you're looking at O.J. Howard, and it's like, okay, he should be able to overcome Cameron Brate. Now Cameron Brate is kind of like a tight end 2. He's off the radar. Then in the third round, they come and they take Chris Godwin, the wide receiver out of Penn State. He's a pro-ready wide receiver, but here's the issue. They don't have a spot for him on the field right now. I'm sure O.J. Howard's going to line up in the slot quite a bit. Godwin doesn't strike me as someone who should be playing the slot. You have Deshaun Jackson, who doesn't play the slot anymore, not after he took a few big hits early in his career. Mike Evans, I suppose, can slide in there. But again, it's just a move that they didn't need to make. I would have rather them gone to either the offensive line, which has massive holes, by the way, and they didn't draft a single offensive lineman. I love what they did here for Jameis Winston, but I don't love what they did for the team because I think they're trying to build around Jameis Winston.
I think for Jameis Winston, they would have drafted some offensive linemen.
It seems like they just wanted to get him a bunch of weapons, and they were okay with the line, which is just, it strikes me as odd. I think the running backs are going to struggle again.
We saw what happens when he gets pressure on him in that championship game. Jameis Winston melts down. And we saw that a lot last season. There were points last season where Jameis Winston was amazing, but when there was a lot of pressure on him, he did not look like a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that's why you see the inconsistency in his games. I mean, you look game over game, there's games where he looks fantastic, and then there's games where he doesn't. And I think it has to do with that offensive line. So to see them not draft a single offensive lineman with one of their 6 picks, it strikes me as really odd. Now, granted, you can get all excited about, the offensive skill position players they drafted, including Jeremy McNichols down there in the 5th round. But again, they have pass catching running backs. They didn't really need it. They didn't need Chris Godwin. Yeah, I don't know. I know a lot of people will like their draft just because of the flashy names, but at the same time, for me, I'm not like going crazy because of it.
The New Orleans Saints, I'm writing an article today giving out draft grades to all these teams, and the Saints are on the borderline of an A and a B for me. They got the number 1 cornerback in the draft. They got one of the top offensive linemen, maybe the top offensive lineman. And then they got some real nice players. Marcus Williams in the 2nd round, Alvin Kamara in the 3rd, Alex Anzalone in the 3rd. I like their draft a lot.
I do too, and I saw some people criticizing the fact that they went with Ryan Ramczyk at the end of the 1st round, but I don't have any issue with it.
And there were people saying he was going to go in the top 15. He went 32.
They were talking about it from a team need standpoint, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think your offensive line can be too good, and I think Ramczyk is someone that can come in and offer day 1 starter type material. Lattimore is going to start right away. Marcus Williams, the safety they drafted out of Utah, he's probably going to start right away. Alvin Kamara, I don't know if there was a better fit in this draft than Alvin Kamara.
Can you explain that to me? Because I've heard that, and I'm not sure why everyone thinks that.
Alvin Kamara, he reminds me a lot of Jamal Charles. And so when you think about the Saints offense, they're really fast-paced. Drew Brees targets the running back position a ton. They get running backs in space. And Alvin Kamara, he may be one of the most dangerous players in space in this draft. So Alvin Kamara, he does his 40 time. When people look at his 40-yard dash time, they're like, well, he's not that fast. But his game speed is a lot faster than you think. Like, I tell people that Brashad Perriman didn't strike me as his game speed was as fast as his track speed. Alvin Kamara is the exact opposite. He gets up to speed immediately. They're going to get him in space. And honestly, for me...
But the thing is, they've got Ingram, they've got Adrian Peterson. That's why I was like, why did they take a running back?
Believe me, I understand that too. But for me, if I'm the New Orleans Saints, I'm shopping Mark Ingram. Now, granted, I don't know what you can get for a running back in today's NFL, but Mark Ingram is no more than a low-end RB2, high-end flex player at this point, with Adrian Peterson stealing goal line carries and Alvin Kamara being a better wide receiver.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on in their backfield. It's really driving me nuts for fantasy football, and I'm probably just going to avoid all those players because I think one of them's probably going to take over. I think maybe Adrian Peterson shows up and he's a lot better than Ingram, and Ingram doesn't get any touches, or maybe Kamara's just way better than them. I have no idea what they're going to do, but the Saints don't seem to split the carries like a lot of these teams. they just give it to the hot hand, and sometimes it's Ingram, sometimes it's Tim Hightower. And, if they're willing to give the ball to Hightower when they've got Ingram, it just makes me think they might give it to Kamara or they might give it to AP.
You know what, Bobby, one thing that really irritates me, and I appreciate you not doing this, one thing that irritates me about people is that they're writing off Adrian Peterson as done. It's impossible for me to say
on the opposite end. I'm a huge believer still.
I love Peterson, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know whether or not he is done, because I don't. But for all those people that are counting him out already without even seeing him run the ball in basically a year and a half, you cannot say he's done. It's the same people that are saying that, the ones that said, I think it was in 2011 when he hurt his knee and he came back and almost broke records the next year. People are always counting out Adrian Peterson. And, I want to know why they're counting out Adrian Peterson but not Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, running backs tend to not bounce back, but AP is the only one who ever has, and he almost broke records when he did.
Yeah, and I refuse to count the guy out. I think that he'll be better than Tim Hightower was, and Tim Hightower was getting plenty of touches in that offense, guys. So, yeah, Mark Ingram is not somebody they want to have 20 touches.
Tim Hightower won fantasy championships 2 years ago.
He did. And I remember when people were running to pick up CJ Spiller that year, and I'm like, nuh-uh, Tim Hightower's the guy. And sure enough, he was. Kamara might not make that impact in his year one, but I think for future, I think he's fantastic in Sean Payton's offense.
Now, Mike, the single most interesting draft to me, and I'm sure you know who I'm going to talk about, the Carolina Panthers. We were talking last week about how Cam Newton never passes to running backs. And then they go out in the first and second round, and they get the same player, Christian McCaffrey and Curtis Samuel. Same player, 6 foot 187, 5'11", 197. They're both running backs and wide receivers. Are they just completely changing their offense here?
I think they're attempting to.
I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know if Cam can work that way.
That's the thing, is you don't know. Cam Newton is not the type to throw a touch pass, guys. I'm sure people have heard in this podcast that, I'm not a Cam Newton supporter just because I don't like the quarterback that he is. Now, granted, is he a threat? Yeah. Is he a threat to deal with? Of course. But if he stops running the ball, that legitimately ruins what he does best. Yep. And by bringing in Christian McCaffrey, bringing in Curtis Samuel, re-signing Jonathan Stewart, giving him that extension, none of it makes sense to me, because basically you're taking away what Cam Newton does best. And Christian McCaffrey, I was doing my projections earlier on yesterday. I sat down and I started going through it. In Carolina, how much they've targeted the running back position over the last few years with Cam Newton. Running back targets, going back to 2014, 68 targets, 64 targets in 2015. 70 targets in 2016. That is legitimately the lowest in the league every single year. And so when you see McCaffrey go there, I think Samuel is going to operate out of the slot. I think he's going to fill a lot of what Corey Brown did the previous season. But I thought that they would go out there and try and get a Ted Ginn replacement rather than someone to fill the slot, and they're running. If
I were the Panthers, I would have drafted 3 wide receivers with my first 3 picks because they need help.
I'm telling you right now, and mark this as May 1st, Devin Funchess is the steal of drafts right now.
Interesting.
Kelvin Benjamin is reportedly 280 pounds.
What?
Yes. Ron Rivera came out, I think it was yesterday, saying that he is extremely concerned and he's keeping an eye on. And this is something
he might have health problems if he's 280 pounds.
No, I think he might. And that's the thing is this is not the first time Kelvin Benjamin has had weight issues. And he, on top of that, he's been a volume dependent wide receiver over his 2 years that he's played. So for me, Devin Funchess is going to have a full-time role, and Devin Funchess could be the breakout player of 2017 when other people are assuming it's Christian McCaffrey and Curtis Samuel.
I mean, we saw Teddy Ginn do it with Cam Newton, so someone's got to get the ball thrown to him, and Funchess has a lot more talent. Now, the last team in this division, the Atlanta Falcons, they got Tarkus McKinley, exactly what they need, but after that, their draft was a train wreck.
Yeah, Tarkus McKinley is someone, he didn't really excite me when I was watching him, and I know a lot of people are crazy about his motor and his toughness, and we all saw his embarrassment of emotion on the stage when he got drafted. There's a difference between being emotional and being obnoxious, and he was very obnoxious, swearing on live TV. But again, on tape for me, there was nothing to me that he was just that I couldn't find somewhere else. So I think he's going to be a little bit overrated. I didn't necessarily love the Falcons draft, but when you looked at their team, they were one of the teams that I looked at, and I was like, they don't have very many holes. And
all they needed was a pass rusher. They got him.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That may have been, I may be wrong. I may be completely wrong on McKinley, but Yeah, their draft was fine. I mean, Brian Hill was the only offensive player that we saw who is.
I mean, they didn't have a second round pick. I like Kazee in the 5th round. He's a ball hawk. I think he can play in nickel and dime packages for what they need now and be a playmaker right away. Yeah. But besides that, I mean, the players they got, they were all reaches at that stage.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was just a very mediocre draft. I don't think there's anything special about what they did.
Let's move on over to everyone's favorite division, at least ESPN's, with the NFC East. Philadelphia Eagles. I know my content manager is a big Eagles fan, and he seemed to like the Derek Barnett pick, but there were some better players on the board at that stage as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you've got Malik Hooker dropping all the way there, Jonathan Allen, and then they take Derek Barnett. I know you like Barnett more than Allen, but I'm not buying it.
Yeah, I like Barnett an awful lot, and I think that they needed a defensive end. They needed someone to bring the pressure because they've been really slacking at cornerback. And I know they tried to address the cornerback position in Sidney Jones. Now, granted, I don't think he's going to be
He's not playing this year.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be playing this year at all. There's rumors that he could potentially start on the PUP list, but I don't think Sidney Jones is going to be playing. And then they got Rasul Douglas in the 3rd round. So for me, I don't hate the Derek Barnett pick. I think that there's some people that really don't like him, and then there's some people like me that like Derek Barnett. I think he's an excellent pass rusher.
I mean, I like him at 14. I just don't think he was the best pick they could have made, considering Jonathan Allen was still there. And a lot of people pegged him to go 2 or 3. They also needed a running back, best running back draft class in 10 years? And then they wait all the way to the 4th round to take Danielle Pumphrey.
Well, that's the thing.
Look, he's fine, but he's not going to be a workhorse in the NFL. And they've got Ryan Matthews with all these neck problems. Like, what are they going to do there?
That's the question. Right now, Ryan Matthews is like my favorite round 19, round 20 MFL 10 pick because Ryan Matthews is free. He's free in any league you're in.
And he's their only guy. He's productive when he's on the field, but yes. Is he going to be on the field, or are they just going to go get Jamal Charles? They've got to do something.
They have to do something. You know, that's actually a good point. I hadn't really thought about that, but Jamal Charles could make a lot of sense for this team. There are a lot of wide receivers on this team. They have a tight end in place. That would make sense, man. I actually think that's a good call.
Now, Dallas Cowboys, they got Taco Charlton all the way at 28. I like the pick a lot. Some people had him going 12 or 13. This was a nice pickup for them. And then Awuzie in the 2nd round, another great pick. Could have got him in the 1st, and no one would have beat an eyelash. Jordan Lewis in the 3rd round. They got some nice picks there. I don't know too much about their late round picks, but a lot of people like this Cowboys draft. Where do you stand?
Charlton, okay. It is what it is. Chidobe Awuzie, I love that pick. It was a great pick. They need cornerback help there, losing Morris Claiborne and Brandon Carr this offseason. It was a big need for them. So to take him and then Jordan Lewis the following round, great. I lost my mind. I don't know why they drafted Ryan Switzer. I'm not saying that Switzer's a bad player, but he's legitimately a clone of Cole Beasley, and Cole Beasley is only 28 years old, so I don't really understand the need. I supposedly they're going to have him as a punt returner, which will help, but you don't take a punt returner in the 4th round. I think that there were other players in the board there that they could have taken. I did like their late round pick of Noah Brown out of Ohio State. I think he's someone that will he'll come in and compete with Bryce Butler, Terrence Williams. May not start right away, but for a 7th rounder, I love the pick of Noah Brown.
Now, the New York Giants, they got Dalvin Tomlinson in the 2nd round. I think that's a fine pick. Davis Webb made it all the way to the 3rd. They think he can be an Eli Manning replacement. I like that pick a lot, and Gallman's all right. But in the 1st round, I have them as a D because in the 1st round, they blew it more than anybody. They took Evan Ingram with the 23rd pick. I thought he was going to go in the late 2nd.
Ingram is someone that was rumored to go to the Steelers, and I thought the Steelers would be a better fit for Evan Ingram. But the Giants, I don't understand the pick just simply because he's not a tight end. Like, for those Giants fans out there that thinking you got a tight end, he's not.
Yeah, you've got 4 wide receivers now.
Yes, he's a big slot wide receiver. He plays essentially the same position that Sterling Shepard was playing last year. So I don't understand the pick. Evan Ingram, it's not like he's a bad player or anything like that, but again, it's just an embarrassment of riches. I think if it helps anybody, it's Eli Manning this year, who has been taken in between the 15th and the 20th quarterback off the board. With all the weapons they have around him, Eli Manning, I actually moved him up. I think I have him as my number 15 quarterback, maybe 14. But yeah, Davis Webb is someone that, again, I have to trust my own eyes. There's some other people out there that say he's a bust and, there's no reason that the Giants should have picked him. I think they got a fantastic quarterback in the 3rd round. There's traits of his, and I don't want people to sit here and quote me and say, oh, you compared him to Tom Brady. But there are certain aspects of Davis Webb's game that the calmness that he brings, the pocket presence, the pocket passing, he bounces in the pocket very well. He throws on rhythm. I think that there's a lot of things about his game that remind me of a Tom Brady-esque type player. So for me, I think Davis Webb was a fantastic pick for the Giants. Granted, they're trying to win right now, and I think that that's part of the Wayne Gallman pick, who I believe is a true 3-down running back, and this is real concern for Paul Perkins owners.
He's a nice player, but I like to have my quarterbacks have a lot more experience than he does. Now, the last team in the NFC is the Washington Redskins. Jonathan Allen dropped. They got Fabian Moreau with the 81st pick. I love those 2 picks. The rest, not overwhelming, but with those 2 picks, I give him a B for sure.
Samaje Perine was a good pick in the 4th round. I think he's a better version of Rob Kelly. So
no way.
Yeah. If you own Rob Kelly, sell him right now. I'm not kidding.
No way. I'm drafting him. He's taken over.
I dropped him down to, I think, my number 40 running back. Perine, I honestly don't. I wouldn't doubt if Perine started right away. And if he doesn't, I think he takes over by week 4. I don't think Rob Kelly offers you enough in today's NFL. Like, he's a 1 and 2 down back that cannot catch passes. And in today's NFL, you need to be special on the 1st and 2nd down to do that. And Rob Kelly's not special. Samaje Perine at least can catch passes out of the backfield.
Let's move on over to the AFC. We'll start with the AFC East and the Patriots since they just won the Super Bowl. My dad's listening in. They're here visiting, and he's a big Patriots fan, so he's crossing his fingers. I won't say anything bad about him. I think this was a great draft. I mean, they got 2 3rd-round picks, a 4th-round pick, and a 6th-round pick, so what can you really do there? But Derek Rivers, I think he's a first-round talent. And he went all the way at 83. Antonio Garcia is a nice tackle for them. So I like what they did. They addressed their one need in the 3rd round and picked up a playmaker.
I don't have any issue with the Derek Rivers pick. I wouldn't go as far as saying he's a first rounder, but I think he can get after the passer. I think he's a solid pass rusher. And, Bill Belichick, there's one thing he does. He gets the best use out of defensive players. So I have no issue with that pick. You have to kind of grade the draft on basically what they did with the picks, right? So you have to look at it and say they got Brandon Cooks, they got Dwayne Allen. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that they did. They got Mike Gillislee, who is by far, honestly, Mike Gillislee is underdrafted right now as well. I think I put him inside my top 30 running backs right now, and it may go higher. He is the
single best runner in the NFL on the goal line. The single best.
I don't know if I'm going to go that far, but again, I do.
I'm talking about the stats. I'm not talking about what I see. I'm talking about what he did with his carries.
Oh yeah,
on
as
the
far
goal
as
line.
Efficiency numbers, he's definitely the number 1 in terms of efficiency over the last couple of years.
Now the Jets, I was not slating Jamal Adams to go to them, but with the Jets, they always draft the best player available no matter what, and that was Jamal Adams. I love the pick. They got Marcus May, another safety in the 2nd round. Then they went wide receiver with 2 great value picks. I love what the Jets did. I always do, except when they take a quarterback. But that's the reason they can't win is because they just don't have a quarterback.
I think the Jets had a terrible draft in terms of what they needed. Terrible, awful.
Yeah, they don't care about what they need. They just take the best players.
That's the problem. That's why bad franchises stay bad. You have to have a good mix of it, right? You have to. There's some players that you need to work with. Now, Jamal Adams is somebody that I actually. As the draft approached, I didn't think that they were going to take Trubisky. I was like, I'm fine with Jamal Adams. So I think he's a fantastic playmaker. I think it's 6. Yeah, that's fine. They didn't, don't pass on a talent like that. But then they get to Marcus May, and I'm like, they didn't really need that. And then they draft, God, I am so mad about this because Ardarius Stewart is someone who was limited in college due to his quarterback play, and now he's in the same exact situation. This dude is a serious baller. He's a Steve Smith with the ball in his hand. He does not run out of bounds. You are going to have to tackle him. He's a monster. But the problem is he doesn't have a quarterback to get him the ball. They took Chad Hansen in the 4th round. I like Chad Hansen as
a great pick.
As a developmental guy. I think that he can eventually be a starting wide receiver. But again, and then Jordan Leggett in the 5th round. They took 3 offensive skill position players in the first 5 picks when their defense is crap. Their offensive line is starting to fall apart. There's so many needs in the Jets. So taking wide receivers is really unnecessary. As well as the tight end position because they've targeted it 20 times the last 2 years.
Now, the Buffalo Bills, they got Tre'Davious White. A lot of people are saying, who is this guy? I didn't see him in the 1st round of any mock drafts. He's a great cornerback. I love him a lot more than most of the cornerbacks. In fact, I have him as my number 2 cornerback on the board behind Lattimore. So I think it's a good value. I'm not sure all the other experts agree. Where do you stand on Tre'Davious White?
I like White. I think he's solid. I think he's got decent size. I
like Sidney Jones better before he got hurt. I'll say that.
Yeah, the Sidney Jones injury is obviously going to knock him down some draft boards. But I actually have no issue with the White pick. They needed to replace Stephon Gilmore. They need help on defense because their defense went from a strength to a negative very fast. I think Zay Jones was early. I don't think that they needed to pick him with the fifth pick in the second round to get him. I think they could have traded back to the end of the second round, maybe even waited.
I agree.
Maybe even waited until that pick they got from the Falcons, the 31st pick in the second round. I think they could have got Zay Jones there. It helps Tyrod Taylor. It helps Sammy Watkins. It's a good thing for everybody. Deion Dawkins was a great pick at the end of the second round.
Love the pick.
Yeah, that was a great pick. Nathan Peterman, don't know if it was necessary, but the Bills draft was okay.
If you're going to draft a quarterback, get Peterman at the fifth. I mean, that was the best value pick in the draft for quarterback besides maybe Kaya.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't have a third or a fourth round pick, so I could see that because I would have rather had Davis Webb obviously in the third round, but I do like Tre'Davious White and Deion Dawkins are definitely worth the picks.
Now, my number one draft, and a lot of people are going to be surprised by this, was the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins got Charles Harris at 22. Some people think that might have been a reach. I think it was a little bit late. I could have seen him going in the top 13 or 14. Great pass rusher. Rakeem McKinley is a tremendous inside linebacker. They got him with pick 54. Cordia Tankersley at 97. All their other picks were steals as far as I'm concerned. The Dolphins nailed it, Tags.
They addressed the positions they needed. They needed a couple linebackers. They got them in Harris and McMillan. Tankersley, I don't know too much about, embarrassingly. I wish that I knew a little bit more about him. I just didn't watch too much tape on him for whatever reason. I saw his name pop up and I'm like,
he's
why
awesome.
didn't I watch more of him? So I'll take your word on it. I did like the Isaiah Ford pick. The seventh round is... He's someone that I actually tweeted out. It was at the end of the sixth. I was like, why hasn't Isaiah Ford been drafted? Is there...
He goes to the seventh round, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously all the words on Leonte Carew, who was drafted last year, I think it was the third round, all the words coming out of Miami is that it's basically like he's basically walking out of the door because nothing's happening right between him and Adam Gase. So Isaiah Ford can essentially be the number 4 wide receiver right away.
I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a lot more snaps during the season. He'll play himself into it. I know he's a 7th round pick, but the boy can play some football.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, with the Baltimore Ravens, they needed some extra help on defense. I mean, it's not that their defense is bad. They just had some holes, and they addressed that with the first 4 picks of the draft. I like all the picks. Marlon Humphrey, Tyus Bauer, Chris Wormley, Tim Williams at 3.78. That's a crazy great value.
Yeah, no, they definitely had a solid draft. And I mean, this draft taught me a lot of things about what they think as the Ravens franchise. Now, one, they like Kenneth Dixon an awful lot. This was a very deep running back class.
That makes me so happy.
Yeah, so same with me, is that they could have basically went, with one of their 5th or 6th round picks, they could have got a halfway decent running back. I mean, we saw Jamal Williams last. We saw Aaron Jones last. Like, there's some names they could have got later in the draft, but they didn't. Also, they have now, whether it be right or wrong, they obviously have a lot of confidence in Brashad Perriman taking the lead.
Yes.
Because you essentially
flew up my draft boards after this draft.
Yeah, Mike Wallace is out there and he's basically aging and he's going to fall off here shortly. They don't really have a possession style receiver, so Perriman is man, I'm going through projections this week, so at the end of the week I'll know where I have Perriman, but I'm telling you right now is there's a lot of targets to go around here because they're one of the heavier passing teams.
I think my man crush for Perriman might have surpassed my man crush for Hunter Henry. I'm going to draft Perriman in every single league until his ADP flies up.
The Hunter Henry one, we're going to talk about the Chargers.
Yeah, we are going to talk about the Chargers. Also, I want to mention, Buffalo Bills didn't go with a wide receiver, and they just lost like 250 targets.
Well, they got Zay Jones.
Yeah, you're right. They did get Zay Jones, but Sammy Watkins, man, he's going to get so many targets if he can stay on the field.
Yeah, even better targets with Zay Jones, honestly. Zay Jones is not someone who's going to like overtake Sammy Watkins or anything like that, but he will attract attention, and it's somebody else on the field for Sammy Watkins to have as a detractor, and it's Tyrod Taylor's stock went up as well.
Now, the Cincinnati Bengals were another A grade for me. I did not like John Ross at number 9. I mean, it's going to help them this year. He's going to be an impact player with all that speed. But in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round, nobody did it better. Not even close. Joe Mixon. Now, Jordan Willis going in the 3rd round. I thought he was going to go in the 1st round. He's an excellent pass rusher. And then Carl Lawson, another one of my favorite defensive ends from this draft, going in the 4th round. Just crazy value here.
I think they got really solid value out of the 3rd and 4th round with Willis and Lawson. Now, my questions, though, come around this offensive line. They lost two very, very Andre Levitre and Andrew Whitworth are both gone, right? So
Joe Mixon doesn't need an offensive line.
No, I'm talking about Andy Dalton, because this is a real concern for the kid, because Andy Dalton's not known to be the most mobile quarterback. And when you have players like John Ross and AJ Green going downfield, you want some time. And my concern here is the offensive line. They didn't address it. They took a center in the 5th round. That's it. That's my issue with it. I love John Ross, the player. He was actually someone in my mock I had going at 8 to the Panthers, and I actually think he would have fit better on the Panthers. But a lot of people didn't see him going this early, but I did. I think John Ross is a playmaker. I think people are underestimating him as a playmaker. They think he's just like the speed guy. He's not just that. Mixon, fantastic player. I don't think that's in question. The question though, Bobby, did they reach on Joe Mixon? Because there was an anonymous survey that went out before the draft, and there were only 4 teams in the league who said that they would even consider Mixon at all.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that came out. So I don't know if they reached on him, but the talent is there. I don't know what they're going to do with Gio Bernard and Jeremy Hill. These are players that they shouldn't be holding on to if they're going to use Mixon, because he does it all. So I like the players that they drafted.
All I've got to say is get him on the field before he goes and gets suspended. Because you've only got so much time with him.
Man, I really hope that's not the case. I really hope he turned his life around. I really hope it. I mean, there was an interview on NFL Network I was watching with him, and she was giving him every opportunity to say, I'm sorry, for those watching at home, that's not me. He didn't really say that. And to think that he probably would have been coached before all this, I don't know. I really do hope that people change, and I want him to change because he's a phenomenal talent. But I love the talent that the Bengals drafted. I just don't know if it helps them right away.
Now, you talk about how everyone always says the Packers had a great draft. I feel like the same is true for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I'm not sure why, but I have them getting the worst draft grade out of any team in the NFL. I know Juju Smith-Schuster was a pretty nice pick at 62, but besides that, I think every single one of their players, not a fan.
You don't like TJ Watt?
I don't like TJ Watt at 30. I like TJ Watt at 55.
I think TJ Watt's a solid player. I think that Mike Tomlin will become a fan really quick of him because he's a hard worker. I know it's easy to say that, he's a grinder like his
you
brother.
could have got Williams in the 4th round, who I think is a better outside linebacker than TJ Watt.
I wouldn't say that, but I mean, I'm not saying that the value wouldn't have been better. But Juju Schuster at the end of the 2nd round, it was a head scratcher for me. I felt like that they didn't really necessarily need him. I feel like Ben Roethlisberger, I mean, at max, I think we're talking about 2 or 3 more years in the league. So by the time Juju Smith-Schuster sees the field in a predominant role, Roethlisberger might be gone. I love Smith-Schuster. He's going to take some time to develop. He's only 20 years old, but he's a great talent. Great. So I think that's basically the walking paper.
Did you see Brian's tweet?
I did. Martavis Bryant said, for all of you people that are worried about Juju Smith-Schuster taking over my spot, basically said, this is Sammy Coates' replacement, by the way. Yeah, it was kind of funny, but I do think it's Sammy
Stone cold, man. That is stone cold.
It was. The pick of James Conner, that's a name to get to know. James Conner, he's someone that battled with cancer, beat it.
Amazing.
Yeah, amazing story. And no, I don't think anybody expected him to be picked in the 3rd round, but he's now backing up Le'Veon Bell behind one of the best offensive lines in football. So James Conner is going to be known as a very, very solid handcuff. He's kind of like a Marshawn Lynch, mini Marshawn Lynch, because he's a monster. He can break tackles with the best of them.
He's a pretty cool player. I was happy to see him get drafted so high, higher than I thought he would go. Now, the final team here in the AFC North, everyone loves what the Cleveland Browns did. I mean, you look at what the quarterbacks went for, the top 4 quarterbacks, and a lot of people thought Kaiser might be number 1. A lot of people thought Mahomes might be number 1. Most people thought Trubisky was number 1, but Kaiser could be the number 1 quarterback in this draft. And they spent a 2nd round pick 52, whereas the Bears spent a high 1st, a 3rd, and a 4th. I love what they did just on waiting to get Kaiser instead of going crazy on these mediocre quarterbacks. They got Garrett at number 1, obvious pick as far as I'm concerned. And Njoku at 29, incredible pick. Jabril Peppers was a reach at 25. But you know what? They made so many good picks in this draft. Caleb Brantley, they're probably going to cut. But Roderick Johnson at 5 in the 5th round, they had a great draft.
Yeah, I don't know. The pick of Brantley in the 6th round, I didn't really understand that at all. He's someone that should have gone undrafted, basically with what happens with him. But I agree with you. I think that the first 3 rounds, they knocked it out of the park between Garrett, Peppers, Joku, Kaiser, and Ogunjobi. Try not to screw up that name.
Yeah, I didn't. I love that pick, but I didn't want to mention him because I didn't know how to pronounce his name.
Yeah, no, it's tough. It's tough with some of these players. No. Here's the thing. I think DeShone Kizer has a little bit of Cam Newton to him in terms of basically he's going to need his confidence at an all-time high in order to perform at a high level. And, this is someone that Brian Kelly came out and said he needs more time on and
he's
off
not
the
lacking
field.
in confidence.
No, he's definitely not lacking in confidence. But that's the thing is, like, if you throw him into the fire right away, he's going to get smoked and it's going to kill his confidence. So for me, as is with basically every single rookie quarterback, I do not like to see rookie quarterbacks take the field in year 1. I don't think Jared Goff should have seen the field. I know Carson Wentz, people were like, oh, he seemed to do fine. He really didn't do so fine after the first 4 or 6 games. He kind of trended downhill. So I prefer quarterbacks to sit back and wait. So if Kizer can sit on the bench for a year, I think this could be a solid pick. I think their defense, it's really sad. And it's one of the things I wrote in my notes is that we no longer get to count on an automatic 2 passing touchdowns against the Browns anymore. Their defense got a lot better in this draft.
Now, the thing I want to say about Brantley is let's just say there's a 10% chance he doesn't get cut. Okay, just a 10% chance. His pick value, according to these draft value charts, is 17. So that would mean that in order for him to be a good value, he would have needed to been, I don't know, like a late 2nd round value. If he didn't have these problems, he's a 1st round talent. He's a late 1st round talent. So basically, it would have been a good value to pick him. Even if there's a 90% chance he gets cut, it would have been a good value to pick him. Well, I understand they're probably going to cut him, and you don't want to set a precedent of drafting guys like this, but in terms of just a statistical viewpoint, I think it was a good pick in the 6th round.
That's the thing. So here is what it is. It comes down to moral compass, and it's either A, you're okay with it, or B, you're not. And it doesn't matter where you get them in the draft. It's like, are you okay with it or are you not? And
I'm not okay with 30% of the players in this league what they do, though. You know what I mean?
That's true.
There are so many of these guys who have got arrested, and I understand what he did was substantially worse than almost anybody else in the draft. I'm just saying, like, these NFL teams don't seem to care.
Yeah, I think for a Browns team that doesn't need his impact right away, that they're in rebuild mode, I think they're a team that doesn't need that. I think that they were on the right track, and I still think that they are at the same. But it was unnecessary because if he's a guy that gets suspended for a year, he's basically out of football, and it's very likely that he gets suspended for quite some time. I would think. I mean, you knock out a girl, knock out her teeth. It's just a bad story altogether.
It reminds me of Sean Oakman out of Baylor. Everyone was saying he might go in the first 5 picks the year before, and then he had all the issues, and he didn't get drafted. He didn't get signed by anyone. He's nowhere to be found in football. You've got a superstar type of talent sitting out there, and nobody touched him. So why did they draft Brantley? It's kind of weird to me.
Yeah, it really strikes me as odd. And even as I was watching the draft, Mike Mayock and Rich Eisen, those guys were like, wow, like, I don't know what information they have, but obviously they've looked into this because nobody expected him to be drafted with this taking place. And it happens a week before the draft when you're basically supposed to be on your best behavior. So what does it say, for all those other times? I just think it's a headache. I mean, I think there's plenty of talented players out there that you don't need to accept this onto your team. I don't think anybody was shocked by the Bengals doing it, but the Browns is a team that's in rebuild mode that is trying to win over their fans again. I don't think that Caleb Brantley was the best pick.
Hey guys, I just realized we're going to go quite a bit over on this podcast, so sorry it's over an hour. Hopefully you guys, I don't know, split it into 2 episodes if you want. It's a little late to say that, but we're talking about the NFL draft, so we're going to get all the teams in. We'll go on over to the AFC South and start with the Tennessee Titans, who I thought had one of the worst drafts. They had the 5th and 18th pick, and I think they blew both those picks.
Really? Oh, no.
I do. Corey Davis, I like him. He's my favorite wide receiver, but at pick 5, I mean, trade back and take him at 15.
Hold on a second.
Adoree Jackson, take him in the early 2nd round, but at pick 18, no.
Adoree Jackson that's the one where I'm kind of like, meh, I'm not really so happy with that one, but they needed a cornerback, so I can't really fault them for that. As for Corey Davis, we learned all of the top wide receivers were gone by, it was pick 9. So therefore,
I guess you're right.
Corey Davis wasn't going to last. So like the Titans
still don't think it was a good value.
I think in the end is if you believe a player is a first round player and you think that he's addressing the position that you need, I think the Davis pick was worth it. I think Corey Davis is a young Brandon Marshall, and if you get Brandon Marshall out of him, I'll take him at 5 every single time. Adoree Jackson, I do think that he's a tad overrated. Granted, he can kind of like do a lot of things for you, but I like the Taywan Taylor pick. Again, a little bit early, but I'm a Taywan fan, so I'm not going to sit here and, be mad about it. Jonnu Smith, they're just trying to surround Marcus Mariota with weapons, and I think that they accomplished that.
Now, the Indianapolis Colts, I give them a good grade just because they got Malik Hooker at 15, which, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to pick Malik Hooker if he's there at 15. But the rest of their draft, I like Quincy Williams, he's all right. Wilson, he's all right. Terrell Basham is all right. But the thing is, Andrew Luck is going to get killed too. They got one offensive lineman.
Yeah, Zach Banner, they took him in the 4th round. And he's really like a run blocking guy. So he's not necessarily known to be a great pass protection type.
Maybe they're just going to sacrifice Andrew Luck?
No, I really hope not. But Andrew Luck, what he did last year, considering now that we know his shoulder was jacked the entire season, it's pretty impressive. My favorite pick of the draft for them, though, was Marlon Mack. Getting him in the 4th round, pick 37 in the 4th round. Value. Marlon Mack is everything that Frank Gore is not. Like he's a playmaker. He could take it to the house at any point. He can catch passes out of the backfield. I honestly think that Mack out of the gate may be the number 2 behind Gore, but I think Mack could overtake Gore.
He's taking over.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think that right now, just because people see him drafted in the 4th round, at the end of the 4th round, I think that they're going to overlook this pick. But I think it's a mistake to do that, and I think Mack will be starting by midseason.
He's the type of guy that I'm going to stash on my lineup and ride out for a couple weeks because it's only a matter of time as far as I'm concerned until he takes over, and he'll be a good one. He'll be a good one right away.
This could be a pick that people like in dynasty drafts that people might take, at the start of the 2nd round, and it may be a pick where like people are like, how did we overlook the running back for the Indianapolis Colts? And I just think that he legitimately should get 1st round consideration in dynasty drafts.
Now, the Houston Texans went up and got their guy with Deshaun Watson. You know how I feel about that. I think you're on the same page with me. It's just nuts to trade up to get a mediocre quarterback.
Yeah, I understand why they did it because, in today's NFL, you need a quarterback to compete, and Tom Savage is not going to help you do that. This is a team that needs a quarterback right now, so apparently that they're not answering a Jay Cutler phone call, which is really stupid to me. I think that I don't even want to get into this. It could turn into a rant. But Deshaun Watson, I think he's going to be a solid NFL quarterback. I have no issue with it. Some people are saying that Watson's going to come in and start right away. But Bill O'Brien has already said Savage is a starter. He's saying that it's extremely hard for a rookie to grasp his offense. So Deshaun Watson does not appear ready to start right away. And Bill O'Brien doesn't want him to. So I don't know. I think I would have rather had them take a pro-ready quarterback. I want to take that back. I don't think that Deshaun Watson's necessarily not pro-ready, but I think that they need to bring in someone to play this year. And if they're saying Deshaun Watson's not the guy, I don't know what they're doing with Tom Savage.
I think he's the most pro-ready, but again, no rookie quarterback is pro-ready in my opinion, unless you're one of these runners like Robert Griffin III, and Deshaun Watson's not. So I'll tell you who is ready, though, is Zach Cunningham.
Yeah, he's a great
player. They got
player.
him with a 57th overall pick.
Great pick.
I would have taken him in the top 25 and been happy.
I agree. I think that was a phenomenal pick where they got him, and I think this means Brian Cushing is on the chopping block.
Yeah, and then Julian Davenport is my favorite offensive tackle value, favorite offensive lineman value of the draft. I don't know if you know much about this guy. 6'7", longest arms in the draft tags, tons of upside. He needs to get a little bit stronger, but this kid out of Bucknell can end up being really good.
Yeah, and he's going to be blocking, obviously, for Deshaun Watson and Dante Foreman, who, by the way, Lamar Miller, you need to seriously put on your hard work and boots, because if you do not do better than you did last year, because he was very mediocre, he didn't break any big plays, Dante Foreman is going to do that. He's a guy that can break a big play at any time. He apparently lost a lot of weight from the end of college season trying to increase his speed, and he's still big enough to be a power back. So for me, Dante Foreman, I think Lamar Miller might go back to being that timeshare running back, and to be honest, it might be better for him. He didn't seem to be suited for a workhorse role, but Foreman, the pick there, I like the pick there for them.
Now, I'm a Jaguars fan, so you'll understand why I'm a little bit critical on their draft. I wanted to give them a big, fat F. Look, I love all their picks. Cam Robinson, DeJuan Smoot, D.D. Westbrook, Blair Brown, Jalen Myrick, all great picks. But Leonard Fournette at pick number 4, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I mean, running backs are not supposed to go in the first round. 2 years ago, nobody would have dared take a running back in the first round. You can go get Jamal Charles for free right now. Leonard Fournette with a 4th pick. You could have got Joe Mixon in the 2nd round. You could have waited until the 4th or the 5th and got Aaron Jones or Jamal Williams, and you take a running back with a 4th overall pick? Give me a break.
I can understand it. I really do. But if they're going to take a running back there, I'm glad it's Fournette. Because they could have taken Christian McCaffrey, and I think Fournette is an Adrian Peterson type running back. So, obviously you're not going to.
I hope you're right.
You can't drop back in the draft and take Fournette because he wouldn't be there. So for me, if they were set on getting someone to hide Blake Bortles a little bit, I'm okay with Fournette. I think that they made a solid pick in Cam Robinson in the 2nd round, coming up, skipping in front of the Seahawks to take Cam Robinson. I think it was a fantastic pick. I am a little kind of wondering why they didn't take a quarterback. I think instead of Smoot, they could have taken Davis Webb, and I think it would have been a great pick. I think Davis Webb would fit what they need to do on offense, take care of the football, kind of like slow down the game. Blake Bortles is this gunslinger that just wants to throw it everywhere. Day Westbrook, did you hear? I wish I could have been in this interview room, but did you hear that he's the first player to ever get kicked out of a combine interview?
I did indeed. I wish that I could have been a fly on the wall. I have no idea what he said.
What could happen that literally would cause you to get kicked out of the room? Like, I don't understand it at all. And I don't think they needed D.D. Westbrook. They obviously have their wide receivers intact with Allen Hurns, Marquise Lee, and
you take a chance on an athlete like that, though.
But I think he's a little bit Ted Ginn. I think he's a Ted Ginn. Like I worry about his 178-pound frame. That the fact that he may not withstand hits in the NFL. Granted, like Ted Ginn, it took him a long time in order to kind of find his place in the NFL. And I think it could be something similar with Westbrook. I don't think he's a starter from day one. But yeah, I don't have any issues, I guess, with the Jaguars draft. I just wish that they had taken a quarterback like Davis Webb.
I mean, you look at all the other players who won the award for best wide receiver in college football the year before. Every single one of them was taken 1st or 2nd round, and then you get Westbrook at 4. And I understand he's got some attitude issues for sure, but I think that could end up being a value pick. We'll see there.
Yeah.
Let's move on over to the final division here, the AFC West. We'll start with the Denver Broncos, and I was really happy to see that Garrett Bowles was the first tackle off the board. I love this guy. I think he's the best. He could be a top 10 type of talent. However, I just realized he's 25 years old.
I mean, yeah, offensive tackles will last a little while, so I'm not totally opposed to Bowles there. I do like him. I think a lot of GMs had Bowles ranked as their number 1 offensive lineman in this draft. It was probably Cam Robinson, but Bowles was right there 2nd. But I did like what the Broncos did as the draft went on. Like, I have no issue with, we talked about the Chad Kelly pick earlier on as the last pick of the draft. I'm okay with it. Carlos Henderson, that was desperately needed because most people don't know Emmanuel Sanders. Bobby, did you know that Emmanuel Sanders is already 30 years old and Demaryius Thomas is turning 30 this year?
What?
Yeah.
No, I did not know that.
That's the thing. Like,
wow.
I did a double take because I was like, wait, they're getting older. I wanted to check my dynasty look, and sure enough, so Carlos Henderson is someone that reminds me of Golden Tate. He's a beast after the catch.
He's a nice player.
He plays bigger than he is. I think Jake Butt was a great pick for them in the
amazing pick, 5th round.
Future Jason Witten right there. I think Butt does everything well. I think that he's someone that he's going to be a starting.
He would have gone in the early 2nd round if he was healthy.
I agree. He's probably not going to play this year at all at the ACL. He may be a pup candidate, but it's okay. The Broncos don't necessarily need him to play right now, but I think it was a phenomenal pick in the 5th round. Like for me, I would have rather the Bears skipped Adam Shaheen and gone with Jake Butt later in the draft.
Yeah. Yeah. I was really crossing my fingers the Jags would take him because they could use a tight end. And Butt was a great value.
I was wondering about that. Speaking of which, your Jaguars, they didn't draft a tight end, right?
No, I don't know what they're going to do there.
Yeah, I don't either.
I don't know. Maybe, who knows? Okay, so Oakland Raiders, they got Garyon Conley at pick 24. They must know something to be able to risk their 1st-round pick like that. That's just kind of crazy to me, but he's talented. And then Obi Melifonwu is, in the 2nd round at pick 56. A lot of people were thinking he was going to sneak into the back end of the 1st round. So even if the Conley air messes up, I think they got a real nice value in the 2nd.
I like their draft. Conley, apparently what happened is they brought him in for a lie detector test, and he passed with flying
Ooh.
colors. They had someone like a professional administrate it, and he was willing to take it, and apparently he passed with flying colors. Apparently there are witnesses to collaborate with his story. So I think Conley, I think they got a steal if that indeed is the case. And, it's really unfortunate because, a lot of times when we see the video, I have no sympathy for those players. But for a player like him, that there's no video and it seems like he may not have done it, I feel for those guys because there are people out there.
Maybe she was just trying to get money out of him.
True.
I'm not saying that. Maybe he really did do something terribly wrong. But, my other thought is maybe the Raiders, this isn't real, but maybe the Raiders just cast this huge smokescreen and made the whole thing up so that Conley would slip to them.
You know what's crazy is that my wife...
Bill Belichick would do it.
No, my wife literally asked me this. We were watching one night and they were talking about this whole situation, and she's like, I'm going to throw something totally out there. Do you think that there's a team that might leak this stuff to have him fall down draft boards? I'm like, no, that's like seriously bad moral wise. And she's like, I'm just saying it makes sense because if he's someone that wouldn't go, like he was going to go on the top of the draft, he could fall to a better team that needs him, like Green Bay. Like if he would have fallen to Green Bay, I think Green Bay would have pulled the plug. But I like their draft. They went defense with their first 3 picks. This is a team that is ready right now. So yeah, I actually like the Raiders draft.
By the way, I'm convinced that the Carolina Panthers did that with Kelvin Benjamin because you remember him saying, I don't remember exactly what the quote was, but he said something along the lines of, it was his plan to run slow at the combine so that he could drop to the Panthers.
What? That just doesn't make any sense. That's nuts.
I don't know. Maybe he's just saying like, hey, I'm not as slow as you all think. I just, was doing this. He's just trying to save pride. But I'm telling you, man,
that's crazy.
The Panthers planned this.
That's crazy.
Yeah. All right, Kansas City Chiefs, what do you think about their draft here, Tags?
I like that. Patrick Mahomes fell into a great spot. All I was asking for this kid is I compared it to like a Jay Cutler situation. He's got so many tools and you want to hone those skills, and it's going to take some time to develop him. So he needs consistency, and going to the Chiefs with Andy Reid is the best possible situation because there's not too many other coaches in the league that have the job security that he does. So he's going to be in place for a long time to develop Mahomes. This is fantastic. Like, I am beyond thrilled for Mahomes. I think that he may have the highest ceiling of any quarterback in the draft. I would actually go as far as to say he has a higher ceiling than Trubisky, though I like Trubisky better. The Kareem Hunt pick, there's a lot of people who are extremely excited about it. I don't think he steals Spencer Ware's job. I think Spencer Ware is a better running back, but I will say this. Andy Reid gets the most out of his running backs. So, if you were a Kareem Hunt believer, this is probably the best case scenario, but I still believe in Spencer Ware.
I thought the Chiefs had one of the worst drafts. I can't believe they traded all the way up to 10 to get Mahomes. Again, you all know how I feel about the quarterbacks in this draft class, but I thought that was a really bad move.
It's a fair wonder because, like I said, it is a high risk thing, but the landing spot could not have been better. I would have not wanted to see him go to a team whose head coach is on shaky ground. Like after Jay Cutler went to Denver, obviously Mike Shanahan was let go, the GM was let go, and then he went to the Bears, and then he never had offensive coordinators for more than 2 seasons. It could have been really ugly like that for Mahomes, but it's not going to be, which is why I'm okay with the pick.
The Chargers killed it. They got 2 of the best 3 guards in the 2nd and 3rd round, man. And they got Mike Williams, Desmond King in the 5th. I love this draft. No, Chargers are going to win the Super Bowl, man.
Oh, God, get out of here. No, okay.
Yeah, I'm exaggerating, but they're great this year.
I actually love the draft outside of the 1st round. I felt like they screwed up the 1st round pick more than any other team could have. And it's not to say that I don't like Mike Williams. It's a player that might not even see the field. In the 1st round, you need to get someone on the field that literally can be a difference maker for you, especially when you're this
they could have got Malik Hooker there, and they needed a safety. I guess if they knew they were going to get Desmond King in the 5th, that makes sense. But Malik Hooker at 7 made all the sense in the world to them.
Yeah, there's a lot of players that made sense over Mike Williams to them. That's the pick that, but I think that ultimately what I wrote, it's an article that's going to be posted actually once we're done with this podcast, is that this is the death sentence of the Keenan Allen is a wide receiver 1 conversation. He's not.
No, you're wrong. I'll fight you over this.
Yes. No, I'm happy. This is definitely something we'll discuss further on. But Keenan Allen is he's outside your top 15 dynasty wide receivers now. He's legitimately falling almost to wide receiver 3 territory.
Yeah, I think Mike Williams is more insurance and then a number 2. We'll see about that. But anyways, we got to wrap up this conversation. Tags, it was a lot of fun, and I'm already looking forward to doing it next year because the NFL draft is just a blast.
It is, and we're going to fight about Keenan Allen and Mike Williams probably on the next podcast. So
that sounds good.
Tune in for that.
Yeah, yep. We'll be recording it later this week. We're going to be doing another one, recording it Friday. It'll get published sometime Friday. So make sure to tune in. If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes. For Mike Tagliere, I'm Bobby Sylvester. Thanks for listening and enjoy your football.
I just wanted you to watch me dissolve.